In 2018, there were actually over 500 emergency landings, and when you see some of these airports, then that number will start to make a whole lot more sense. Please refrain from using the lavatory while we nosedive into these 10 unsettling airports. Before we get stuck into the nitty-gritty, keep in mind that around the world, the average runway length is about 6,000 feet. Larger airports with greater air traffic have, you guessed it, larger runways. New York's JFK Airport runway is 14,572 feet. Chicago's O'Hare's is 13,000 feet, and the main landing strip in Melbourne, Australia is 11,998 feet. Alright, jet setters, we'll start off on some home soil. First up, we've got the Telluride Regional Airport, a nightmarish concoction of strong vertical turbulence and a lovely pair of dramatic 1,000-foot sheer cliffs on both ends of the runway. Sitting at 9,070 feet above sea level, Telluride is actually the highest airport across the country, meaning that during the wintry months, the winds become extra icy and pilots are forced to battle against the additional glare that bounces off the snow-capped mountains. And there are plenty of mountains in the area to contend with, that's for sure. The runway sits in the San Juan National Forest in southwestern Colorado, meaning that pilots have to navigate around Mount Wilson, Whipple Mountain, Brown Mountain, and Mount Sneffels. Anyway, you get it. Telluride is not a fun time. Landing on our list is a secluded airport that less than 20 people are trained to fly to, because you basically can't actually see the 6,500-foot runway until you're right on top of it. Remember, that's only about half the length of O'Hare. We're talking about Paro Airport hidden in the mountains of western Bhutan. If you're not sure where Bhutan is, it's below Tibet. And if you're not sure where Tibet is, well, here's a super obvious map. These aren't just baby mountains. These are jagged 18,000-foot high giants. That's about 2/3 the size of Everest, so yeah, pretty big. The main reason why pilots shudder at the thought of Paro is because of how close the bottom of the plane comes to the mountain peaks. Like, bring a second pair of underwear kinda close. Plus, it isn't until the very last second, after a quick 45-degree turn and steep descent, that the pilot is actually able to see the runway. Nevertheless, assuming the passengers make it in one piece, the surroundings are nothing less than stunning. You know where else is stunning? Dubai. Want to know how the Dubai royal family spends its billions? Then check this out. Alrighty, we're jetting off from Bhutan and heading on a 45-minute flight to the east to the world's most ominous mountain. Yeah, it's Everest. It's home to the heart-stopping, mega-intimidating Lukla Airport, aka Tenzing Hillary Airport. These bad boys are the two dudes who first conquered Everest, in case you didn't know. It sits well over 9,000 feet above sea level, nestled in between the menacing Himalayan mountains. The runway is almost 10 times smaller than New York's JFK Airport, barely scraping in at 1,600 feet long. Plus, often the pilots are forced to land like they're in the dark ages due to a lack of electricity at the airport, meaning that there are no lights to guide their way, and also that they need to be in constant communication with air traffic controllers until they're safely on the runway. Being safely on the runway isn't as easy as it sounds either, because apart from strong crosswinds and icy surroundings, there's an immovable mountain wall on one side, an almost vertical 2,000-foot drop on the other, and a 12% incline to contend with along the way. Enough mountains, right? For our next pilot nightmare, let's head to the Dutch Caribbean island of Saba, where one of the world's shortest commercial airport runways awaits, ready to scare the living bejesus out of anyone who's brave enough to land there. Saba's Wancho y Rasquin Airport only has 1,300 feet of tarmac, which is just over 3 soccer fields in length. The truth is that this tiny airport is actually one of the most picturesque in the world. In fact, it actually took out pole position on the official 2017 Scenic Airport Survey by Private Fly. But just because it's a 10 out of 10 looks-wise, that doesn't mean that it's all fun and games. Not for a second. Overshoot the runway? Yeah, you'll end up in the ocean. There are steep cliffs on either end of the runway that plunge straight into the Caribbean. Oh, and if you were thinking that this island looked a little familiar, don't worry, you're not crazy. It was actually the original King Kong movie island. I don't know about you guys, but I'm pretty content to keep working on my tan in the Caribbean. Let's jump on over to the neighboring island of St. Martin, which plays host to the famous Princess Juliana International Airport. You know, the one where planes all but suck sun-soaking travelers into their engines because of the runway's awfully close proximity to the beach. Yeah, that one. As the planes make their final descent to the runway, they're forced to come within 20 meters of beachgoers. On a clear day without turbulence or crosswinds, skilled pilots should have no issue with this. However, when we start to factor in weather complications and really tall people standing on Maho Beach, things get a bit trickier. When the planes get too close to the shore, the forceful push of air can scatter items in every direction. Unfortunately, back in 2017, one of those items was an actual person who was swept off her feet when the pilot came too close. And we don't mean that in the love-struck sense. We mean that she literally was shot into the air like a cannonball. Okie dokie, at number 5, give a warm, breezy welcome to Toncontin Airport in Honduras. The main issue with this runway is its narrow size. If anyone else wasted their entire school summers playing Flight Simulator, you'll understand that narrow runways are a pain in the, well, let's just say they're terrifyingly difficult to land at. Plus, there's a dramatic sharp turn just before arrival, with massive mountains right next to the runway. So if Fancy Pants Mr. Pilot makes just a slight misdirection, he'll end up hanging out in a cave till the end of eternity, or probably worse, like, being exploded. Sliding into number 4 is the slippery, icy, teeny-tiny Courchevel Airport in the chic French ski town. And not just regular chic, like ultra chic. The town has Michelin-starred restaurants, designer shopping, and has welcomed the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, Brigitte Bardot, David and Victoria Beckham, and us, of course, because we're rich too. Anyway, deep-pocketed celebs and fancy chateaus aside, the airport itself is as menacing as you'll see today. Combining an uncomfortably angled runway with a super fun 18.5-degree decline, and by super fun we mean holy freaking hell no, terrifying! The brakes need to work extra hard, but if there's a slip-up, or if the pilot overshoots the 1,700-foot tarmac, well, say hello to the giant vertical cliff at the edge of the mountain. Oh, and there are no lights on the runway either, because, you don't want to actually give the pilot a chance at survival or anything like that. Alright, we've touched on short runways a bit throughout this video, but granted, they're usually in the middle of nowhere and don't really affect too many of us on a daily basis. Well, what if we told you that there was a tiny runway that was actually the main landing strip in a city of over 12 million people? Yeah, well, that's Sao Paulo's Congonhas Airport for you. It's not the smallest we've seen by any means, but considering that it welcomes huge commercial jets daily, there's minimal room for napping on the job. Sitting in a built-up part of city means that planes barely scrape over the top of buildings, and if they actually touch down in one piece, the runway is notably one of the most slippery commercial tarmacs in the world. Since this is a heavily trafficked airport, unfortunately there have been a number of accidents over the years. Hang in there, peeps, we're almost approaching our final destination. But first, we're gonna make a quick stop over in the shallow bay of Tregmoor, a remote Scottish island. Wait, hold up, where's the airport? Well, actually, it's underwater. This isn't some Atlantis voodoo magic, and we promise that the Loch Ness Monster was not involved. The fact is that because the Barra International Airport is only 5 feet above sea level, whenever the tides are high, well, it simply disappears underwater. The weather's also notoriously poor, churning out both turbulence and the lead up before giving pilots one more take that with crosswinds. Usually our beloved pilots remain calm and collected over the PA, being all like,
this is your captain speaking. Everything looks, great. Listen to how cool my voice sounds over the announcement system.
But when they're heading down to Tregmoor, they're more like,
this is your captain speaking. Screw this. I'm freaking scared. We're gonna go back. Bid for yourself. Everyone bail. Just bail.
Alrighty, gang, put your seat back to its upright position because we've made it to the end. Wrapping things up at number 1 is Gisborne Airport, down in New Zealand, which is not part of Australia, by the way, for our last geography tip of the day. There's not too many pointy buildings, no jagged mountains, no dramatic cliffs, and it's not covered in ice. There is, however, one glaring issue. There's a frickin' set of active train tracks that intersect with the runway. Trains and planes at the same time at full speed should not mesh. The plane landings are supposedly coordinated with the train schedules, but if the train's delayed, then, well, we're in for some fast and furious explodey situations. And there is no way we want another installment of that franchise.